a simple off-grid cabin that anyone can build and anyone can afford. My name's Dave Whipple, and thanks for coming back for part 2 in this series. In episode 1, my wife Brooke and I started from the ground up, building a very simple, very affordable 10 by 12 cabin. We cleared the site, installed the foundation, built the floor system, sheeted and insulated it, stood the walls, got the rafters up on the roof, got most of the sheeting done on the outside. If you haven't seen the first video, the link is in the description of this video. In this video, we're going to pick up exactly where we left off. You can see our time is running out for building outdoors. Pretty much everything has ice on it. It's early December and winter is just around the corner. So today we're going to get the sheeting finished. We're going to get the staining finished. From here we have doors and windows and the installation of a wood stove. That's going to get us completely dried in so we could work at finishing this cabin even if there's a foot of snow on the ground. While I'm working on finishing up the sheeting, Brooke is trimming out the corners of the building. She's using a standard furring strip you find at any hardware store, and she pre-stained these inside our house. Right now, it's so cold that the stain would have a hard time drying. I'm going to use this junky old tin counter to cut out some flanges for the chimney. You need a flange for the outside of the building and a flange for the inside of the building. Now we're going to be using 6-inch stovepipe, but where it passes through the wall from the inside to the outside of the house, we'll need a stainless steel double-walled insulated pipe. Now this metal flange is going to support the weight of the insulated section of chimney pipe, and it's going to be very stout once it's nailed into place. Now a setup like this is what I've always used. And it's kind of an odd part to find. You may have a hard time finding it, so I generally just make mine. Any stiff sheet metal that you have will do just fine. I'll temporarily tack this piece of siding on so I can go inside and mark where that chimney opening box is, and I can cut that out outdoors. Later on, when I'm ready to install the chimney, I'll have to put a flange exactly like this on the inside. Brooke is staining the ends of the roof boards so that they don't need to be stained in place later. They're ready to go as we put them on. With the chimney flange installed and all the sheeting done, as Brooke is wrapping up, trimming out the corners, I'm going to finish the 1x4s on the roof, and then we'll be ready to go for roof metal. When it comes to roof metal, if you get the first sheet right, every other sheet goes on very easy. You want it even across the overhang, and you want it even on the very end of the building. When you look down the first rib, you want it as even as you can. That looks about right. Now that the first sheet is on and it's correct, everything else should go on easy as pie. Now in episode 1, I pre-drilled all the metal at one time, stacked up in a neat pile. So now I just go stuff screws in the holes. I've done a lot of roofing in the past, but I've never roofed underneath a tree branch that I had to crawl under like this. Metal roofing is my favorite style of roofing. Not only is it very, very easy to do, but it sounds fantastic when it rains. Get the first sheet straight, and when you put on the next sheet and the next, make sure that the seam is tight before you screw it down. It's about all there is to it. Oh, and make sure your measurements are right. When I put these boards on, I had it in my head that they needed to be an inch longer. Now I'm cutting them off. One more sheet, and we'll be all wrapped up. That's a pretty good day. Sure is nice to have it out of the weather. We got a light dusting of snow last night. That's enough to get your attention. Time to get windows and doors in and get this place heated. Then we'll be all set to work on it. Now, these flange vinyl windows are super simple. You basically just caulk the exterior of the hole, put the window in place, make sure it's centered. You may need a wedge or two on the inside to get it centered. Then screw it off. And then when you trim around the outside of this window, you won't see the screws. Very, very simple. These modern windows are pretty easy to put in. But for the large picture window in the front, we're going to use a pane of glass that we've always had. It's been sitting in the chicken coop for years, but it's free and we've got it. So we built the hole specifically for this big window. We're going to put it in here in just a minute. Now these vinyl windows have a flange that's about 1 inch wide, and that's what you put the screws through. Now that this window is all screwed off, Brooke is going to take these furring strips that she's already painted in the basement and trim that window out. Gotta say, the red on black looks pretty good. I'm adjusting the hole for the picture window just a little bit. I may have built it 1 inch too big, so I'm just kind of filling in some of the space. And then I'm going to put a strip of wood all the way around so when the window goes in, it'll just nest right up against that strip. A lot of old houses are built with big picture windows installed just like this. You just put the glass in the hole and then trim around it. Kind of a delicate operation. This is a very, very large pane of glass, and it's old. You can actually see the wave in the glass if you were right here with us. Little care needs to be taken putting a window like this in, or transporting a window like this from wherever you got it to wherever it needs to go. But once it's in, and once it's secured, it's kind of a done deal. You can move on with life and just enjoy it. Now it's time for the door. Once the door is in position, I'm going to set it on a piece of furring strip so that the gap between the bottom of the door and the floor is exactly correct all the way across the bottom. And then just screw the door off in place. And then we'll trim in that opening. This is an old door that Brooke picked up and painted.
No one is home. Don't you be mean to my sloth.
Open the door! Once this cabin is done, Brooke and I are going to be just like the sloth on the front door. Just a good place to hang out. I read one time that the most efficient crew you can have is just one person, yourself. But if you've got two people that are on the same page and stay out of each other's way, it can be just as good. While Brooke is nailing off the trim for this picture window, I'm working on another flange for the chimney for the inside of the cabin. Then when she moves on to finishing up the stain work, hopefully I'll be moving on to something else too. This time of year, you need every day that you can get. And it's very important to keep the ball rolling.
So much better.
Now this is the wood stove we're going to use in the cabin, and it's brand new. This is very important. When you buy a brand new stove, you have to burn it out first. The stove paint will smoke terribly, Some stoves, the smell never goes away. The Waldzang boxwood stoves that you see in a lot of hardware stores, I've owned those before where they've stunk the entire time I owned them. Make sure you get all that paint burned in and it stops smoking. We're not going to be using the galvanized chimney pipe that this stove came with, but it's important to burn off that pipe before you ever use it inside, if you're going to use it in a wall tent or some similar situation. See that smoke rolling off the stove? Time to trim out the door. Where the door sits, it's 2 3/8 of an inch from where the door should sit to the outside of the sheeting. So I'm cutting my strips 2 3/8 of an inch. The door will sit nice and tight up against those strips of wood when it's shut. Once I get all of the trim done, then I can put a door strike plate on and actually close the door and have it shut.
Look who's come to put in some time on the job site. It's the wolf. You're a big dog. You can do a lot of work. That's right.
From here, I'm going to put in the strike plate for the door. In a lot of aspects of construction, you're working with what is already there. You're working with the existing materials. When you hang a door like this that isn't pre-hung, you have to shut the door and find out where it's actually going to land, and then that's your spot where you put your strike plate. You could use a paddle bit for this job too, but I didn't have the right size paddle bit. But I had the right size auger. About the only things to consider in this operation is a hole deep enough for the latch to sit in, and make sure you put the strike plate in the right place. Now it's time to tackle the chimney. Installing the wood stove is going to make everything complete. Now that we have doors and windows in, we just need the stove and we've got heat. I'm going to start off with a single section of stovepipe. A wood stove has 2 ways to control it, a damper and a draft. The draft regulates how much air is allowed into the stove, and the damper regulates how much air is allowed up the chimney pipe from the stove. Right now, I'm installing the damper. You buy a damper plate for the size of the stovepipe that you're going to use. This is a 6-inch stovepipe. This is a plate that fits inside of that. You need a hole on both sides of the stovepipe that's pretty much straight across from one side to the other. And then you just key in this rod into the damper valve. Turn the rod, turn the valve. When you close the valve, it forces the fire to burn more slowly. Here is the section of double-walled stainless steel insulated pipe that's going to pass through the wall. Now you could run your chimney right up through the roof. I like to pass them through the wall on a small cabin like this. If it was a house, I would go through the roof. But on a cabin, I've found it quick and easy just to go right straight through the wall. I've installed chimneys like this on small cabins for 20 years and never had any issues. On a house, I would go straight up, especially if you're going through an attic or any kind of enclosed space. I would go completely up, all the way out the roof with insulated pipe like this. But at about $35 a foot, it's kind of cost prohibitive on a small cabin like this. So I like to use just one single stick and pass it out through 2 flanges on a sidewall. It also has kind of an interesting old school look that I like. Now what I'm doing here is I'm screwing each of these sections of stovepipe together with self-tapping screws. You don't want any of these pipe sections to come apart on you, especially while you're using it. Now I'm going to temporarily set this stove in on 2 blocks of 2x4. The reason being is I need that space to do flooring. We're going to need some kind of space to pass flooring underneath this to complete the flooring. So this is a temporary installation. Also, the stove is too close to the wall. When the flooring is done, the stove is going to be placed in its permanent spot, and that's where it's going to be installed. But for the rest of this project, we are going to need indoor heat. So a temporary installation on the inside portion of this stove is going to get this place warmed up. On the outside, I need the measurement from the wall to where the pipe actually is going to be. Then I'm going to build a chimney standoff using just a strap of mild steel. A chimney standoff is just a bracket that holds the chimney at a certain distance from the building. It attaches to the chimney, it attaches to the building. In this case, it's just going to be a big horseshoe loop. I'm going to screw all these sections of pipe together, so when I go up the ladder, they're going to go up as one piece. Now, because I'm attaching the chimney standoff to the 1x4 roof boards, I need to make sure that my screws are short enough they don't go through the board and up through my metal roofing. I always attach the chimney standoff to whatever is convenient and solid. If this roof would have had a piece of fascia on this side, I would have probably built the standoff to attach right to the fascia. Later on, I'll mold that chimney standoff to fit tight around that pipe and get those extra couple self-tappers in so that every available hole has a screw through the standoff into the pipe. That'll hold it nice and solid. I'll throw in a temporary heat shield and let's fire this thing up. It always feels good to get to this point in a construction project where you have indoor heat and you can continue with the project regardless of what the weather's doing outside. Let's fire this thing up and see how it heats.
Oh, that's nice.
Now, even without insulation, it doesn't take much of anything to get this place nice and warm. Sure is nice to see that wood stove burning and to see the smoke coming out of that chimney. A simple off-grid cabin that anyone can afford and anyone can build. That's the idea. Now that we're completely done with the outside, we're going to move on to the inside. We're going to finish this place out and enjoy it. Now, there's a lot more left to do, but I'm pretty happy with where we're at right now. See you on the next one.